Let me set the scene for you. You're in a staff meeting, you're on that Zoom call, and there is a thick layer of tension. There is an elephant in the room, and that elephant is conflict, some underlying conflict that exists between maybe two of your team members. And even though that conflict might exist outside of the meeting, it is just bleeding into all the work. The way those two interact with each other, the way we are collaborating, the way ideas are being passed around. It is awkward. It is so uncomfortable. And when that person or both leave the room, there is a sigh of relief. It's as if we can just talk again. We can just act normally and work freely. Can you identify? Is that thick tension? Does that feel familiar to you? I'm sure it does. If you are a leader, you have had to handle conflict, and it is hard. So how do we do it in a way that promotes health for our organizations, that protects our cultures, and keeps our people happy and high performing? That is what we're going to dive into today. Hey friends, it's Kara List, your leadership coach. Welcome back to the Culture Keepers podcast. Here we discuss topics that empower you, the awesome leader that you are, to cultivate thriving workplace cultures where your teams are happy, thriving, high performing, all the things we just really dream for our teams. That's what we're here to do together. And today we're talking about conflict. It is no fun, no one likes it, but it exists. And so as leaders, we need to know how to handle it head on. So before we kind of jump into the problem solving of how we handle it, I want to just level set a little bit and actually talk about what I am referring to when I say conflict today, because there are multiple kinds of conflict. So there's productive conflict, right? This is the kind of conflict that where we wrestle our way to a better solution, right? Where we collaborate around ideas, and the common goal is the good of the organization. So several years ago, our extended family decided that we were going to go on a family vacation. And we decided that we were going to pitch all these different ideas of where we should go as an extended family, all the siblings, all the grandkids. And so everyone kind of tossed around their ideas, looked up their own Airbnbs, looked at different beaches, different places, and kind of submitted their best options, right? Like pushing for their Shark Tank pitch. This is the vacation our family should go on. And even though we might have pushed for one certain place, ultimately in the end, we all win. We all get a vacation and we all get to go together. So we were going to win no matter what. But that conflict was good, right? Like it was productive conflict. Another kind of productive conflict is challenging the way we're doing things, right? That person who steps in and has that working genius to say, why are we doing this thing like this? Or is there a better way? Or are we handling this wrongly? And oftentimes we don't like that kind of pushback, that kind of conflict as leaders, right? It makes us second guess what we're doing. But I want to encourage you, if you have an employee that is questioning the status quo, that person is a culture add. So I want to be clear. When I say culture add, I mean that they are bringing something. They align already with their values. They're not questioning your company's values, your mission. Those things are aligning, but they're questioning the way you might do things culturally that is going to in turn make your culture stronger, better, more diverse, right? So these are cultural adds. We need these people. When you are doing the same kind of work over and over and over again, day in, day out, when you've been working with the same team for a long time, it is very easy to start thinking the same way, right? It's not even recognizing missed opportunities or errors in what you're doing. So we need diverse voices. So if someone comes onto your team, or there's a person on your team who maybe is creating a little bit of productive conflict that adds to your culture, that stops you in your tracks to think, is there a better way we can do this? Are we maybe seeing this wrongly? Can we not see clearly? Then those people are gold. You keep those people always. You encourage their feedback, and you consider them to be a cultural add. That is productive conflict. So the opposite of productive conflict is harmful conflict. Harmful conflict is the conflict that exists where there's resistance towards each other or ideas in such a way that it makes it impossible to make progress, impossible to move ahead. So I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. I grew up in a super small town, Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. If you have heard of Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, or you've been there, you know how amazing it is. If you have not, and you're looking for like that small town gem, like best small town in America, Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, home of the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, you have to go. So I grew up in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. It was a 4-ish traffic light town. And one of the things we did, and if you grew up in the 90s, regardless of where you grew up, you probably did this. For birthday parties or special events, we'd have those scavenger hunts where you had a disposable camera, right? And you had clues, you had to run around our little small town, and you'd have to, with your group, take pictures of all of you doing something or all of you finding something, right, on this digital camera. And I think back, I'm like, how do we even determine who won? Like, I guess we had to wait a couple days, right? Or go to like the 1 hour CVS the next day and get our disposable cameras developed to prove, right, that we did all those things. So when I think about those fun scavenger hunts that really just mark like my middle school, high school years, I think there was often conflict, right? It's like when you're in one of those challenge rooms. What are those rooms called? You know what I'm talking about. Why can't I think of the word? The challenge rooms where you have to like get out at a certain time. You know what I'm talking about. Why isn't it coming to me? So those rooms, right? When you're with a group of people and you have to solve something in order to get out, or you have to finish this scavenger hunt, there is conflict, right? Because everyone has their own idea. This is the route we should take that's quickest. No, we should go this way. We should do this. But ultimately, what do you want? You want to collectively and collaboratively win. You want to get out of the room. It is going to kill me until I think about, why can't I think about what kind of room those things are? Okay. By the end of this podcast, it's going to come to me. And I know right now you're shouting in your car or wherever you're listening to this right now. You're like, this is the name of the room, Kara. It's not hard. It's going to come to me. But the goal collectively is to win as a team, right? So that conflict is good. It's productive. It's just natural. Harmful conflict in those scenarios is when the one person just decides, I'm just going to do it my own way. Like, forget y'all. I am going to take my own route. And then suddenly that person isn't in the picture, right? So your team can't win because you're missing a person, or that person who's gone rogue in the whatever room it is, is totally throwing you off, right? Totally throwing you off. And so that is just a really practical example of harmful conflict versus productive conflict. So today we're going to talk about harmful conflict. And I want to encourage you, the harmful conflict can still be used for good. If we can acknowledge conflict and we can handle it well, it will serve us, it will serve our teams, it will serve our culture. So harmful conflict isn't something we want to avoid. That's the last thing we want to do. Running away from harmful conflict is no good. Bad news, okay? It's bad. It's going to harm your culture. It's going to harm your people. The best thing you can do as a leader is run towards conflict, which is counterintuitive and often annoying, right? I have kids. There's conflict all the time. They're small. I just want a day of peace. I'm sure there are days where you and your team, you just feel like, can we just have a day of peace? Like a day where there just isn't any of this conflict, where like we live in this beautiful world where we collaborate so well and we have great ideas and we support each other and everyone is just so close, so great. It's not reality, right? But ignoring it only makes it worse. So, leader, how do we acknowledge it and handle it well? What does that mean? Well, I have four steps. They're pretty straightforward. 4 steps that I promise you, if you can approach conflict like this, it's a game changer. It's a game changer for you, your team, your organization as a whole. But I have to tell you up front, it takes work. Like, this is a commitment. You're saying, I care enough about my people, I care enough about my company, my organizational culture to say, I'm willing to do the work because it's my job and because I care. So before we go any further, you need to make a conscious effort as you're listening to this to decide, wow, that sounds like a lot, but I'm going to do it because it's worth it. So these 4 steps. And to make it easy, I created a guide where all of this is mapped out for you. This guide is fully comprehensive, has all the 4 steps. It even has script tips, like things you can say in this process, additional thoughts. It's super comprehensive. It works And I made it all on paper just for you to use. A lot of these things you might already know, but it's that template that gives you the confidence to say, okay, I have a step-by-step guide. I can do this. I can handle it one step at a time. So I'm going to leave that link below for you in the show notes. You can grab it, or you can go to heycaralist.com/conflict and you can grab it there. It is a free guide for you. So for today's examples with these 4 steps, I'm going to just make an assumption that we're talking about conflict that exists between 2 members of your team. These same principles apply if you are one of the people involved in the conflict. But for the sake of going through these steps today, we're going to play it like we're talking about two team members that you lead. Escape room is an escape room. You're welcome. Thank you for bearing with me as you were screaming that at your AirPods. Escape room. Okay. Step number 1, encourage direct communication. So one party comes to you and they share all the beef they've got with the other person, or you just know, and you need to go to each person individually. So you are going to encourage that person to do the best that they can to resolve it directly with the person. Go to the person you have a problem with. It seems straightforward, but I will say it is so tempting as a leader to say, I'm going to fix this. We're all going to get in a room and we're going to hash it out. I've had it. We're going to get in a room. We're going to handle this. We're going to figure it out. I encourage you not to do that. What I encourage you to do is say to the individual or to the individuals separately, you need to go to each other and you need to discuss the issues that are going on here. One of the ways you can keep yourself from trying to fix it is to take on the role of a sportscaster, not a referee. So when you think about a referee, they are in the game, right? They're calling penalties, they're kicking people out, they're in there breaking things up, they are doing the work for the team. What does a sportscaster do? They're standing far away, they're looking on, and they're just calling what they see, right? So I hear you saying that you're upset because this person did this thing. Have you gone to them and talked to them about it? I'm looking forward to our next one-on-one where you tell me how that conversation went. Let's make sure that you have that conversation this week. Just these prompts to say, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to repeat it back to you. And I'm going to acknowledge that this work needs to happen because we're adults. And I'd like you to take the first try at it on your own. So you're not getting in the mix. You're not fixing it. You're not even suggesting ways to solve it. And here is why. You might know exactly, or you might think you know exactly what needs to happen in order for this conflict to be resolved. But by doing the work for them, you are creating a culture of dependency. How many times has someone, a friend, a parent, a grandparent, an employee come to you and your response was, do you want me to Google it for you? Like this is something that you Google, right? But often we don't send them back with the challenge to carry on. We just Google it for them, right? We find the answer and we give it to them, which creates a culture of dependency, right? This culture where people are always coming to us for the answers and it's just the easiest thing to give them the answers. So this is your opportunity to not give the answers. This is your opportunity to coach, to invest time in the people to say, I am going to help you. I'm going to support you in Googling it yourself, right? Going and trying to resolve it on your own. Here's what I heard you say. I encourage you to bring it to that person. And amazingly, just that can be enough. That's step 1. But can you imagine if we were just more direct with each other in general? If we just went to the person we had a problem with and said, when you said this, it really offended me, or, we're not seeing eye to eye to this and I don't think you're listening, or whatever it is, right? If you could just go directly to the person and handle it. So often we just go around, right? We do everything we can to avoid confronting the conflict instead of going directly to the person. Now, there is an exception. This is key. An exception to you saying you need to go handle this directly is if someone comes to you with a situation that involves misconduct or abuse in the workplace. That is your job. That is your responsibility. That person gets safeguarded. And now you put on your leader hat and you do the work, right? You say, this is now my responsibility, not yours. So there is the exception. If it is a case of misconduct or abuse, that is your responsibility to handle, not the person who brought it to you. Okay, so let's say step number 1 didn't solve the problem. Conflict is still happening. One or both come back to you and say, we can't work it out. It's not going well. Conflict is not resolved. At that point, the step number 2 is to add a third party. That third party could be you. It could be another supervisor or leader that you task with that. And I want you to think about it like marriage counseling, okay? If you've ever experienced marriage counseling, if you're married and you haven't done any marriage counseling, side note, I really encourage you to do it. My husband and I have benefited so greatly. We've been married for almost 15 years. It'll be 15 years this September. And marriage counseling is for everyone. And it's also just best to do before there's conflict. But if there is conflict or lack thereof, marriage counseling is awesome. And why? Because you have this person of accountability in the room who is helping clear the air, right? Helping to establish some communication ground rules and are there to facilitate, to mediate, to repeat back what is being said. And sometimes we just need that third person in the room. Now, here's the thing. You're still a sportscaster. You're not a referee, okay? Not yet. The only point in this step where you might have to be a referee is if you start to feel that the space is no longer safe, right? If you need to call a timeout, you need to say, hold up, the way we're talking to each other is not helpful, it's not kind, it's not respectful, whatever. If behavior starts to get to a point where you need to referee, obviously you do that, and you do it by saying, here are the ground rules, right? Or we're taking a break, or we're going to come back to this tomorrow, or whatever you decided that it is. But unless that is the case, you are still just a sportscaster, and you're only asking questions and making statements if necessary. Wouldn't it be amazing if you opened up the floor and allowed conversation to happen and you just were able to be there and maybe every once in a while provide a question? As leaders, we feel this responsibility to provide such value all the time, right? Like we want to have the answer. That's just part of our flaws in leadership, is wanting to have all the answers. But our people are very capable, right? Very capable. And so take the pressure off yourself to be a marriage counselor, to be a therapist in that time. You're literally just the third party. You're an extra voice in the room. You're a source of accountability. You're repeating what you hear. And hopefully that will guide these two to reach a point of resolution. So after step 2, you've been a neutral party, right? Just facilitating this time, this safe space. Let's hope that it's done. But in the event that it isn't, and you witnessed firsthand how together they could not come to resolution, then it is time to move to step number 3, which is to intervene individually. So this is where you set up separate meetings with each individual and you're coaching them individually. At this point, you've taken off your sportscaster persona. You're jumping into the game. But you are now the coach. You're not the referee. You're the coach. But you're the coach to both teams. So you now separate the conflict to the best of your ability, and you're coaching individual people, focusing on their contribution only. You're letting them speak their side of the story, saying all the things they need to say, and then you respond with, now I'd like to give you my insights. And with those insights, you call out what you have observed that they need to own. That is their responsibility. You cannot change someone who is not in the room. I do this with coaching all the time. I cannot tell you how many coaching calls I get on with people and they start talking to me about another person. And I can't coach that person who's not in the room. Can't make any changes to that person. The only person I can coach is the person in the room. And so that is the focus. The focus is not the other person. The focus is you, right? As your leader, in this moment, as your coach, how can I get you to grow in this? What do I see that you can do to support conflict resolution here? We're not trying to change people. The pressure to change people is too great, and it's an impossibility. We cannot change people, but we can create range. So this range, not change situation where here's the range, right? They can move up and down. They can grow. And we're not asking people to change. We're asking them to grow. Why? For the sake of the good of the organization, right? For the mission, for the values, for our culture, for your sanity, right? And for the good of the other person, because we want to be empathetic people who care about others and want to see other people succeed. So that is what you're doing. You're coaching just that person. And that will have to come with clear expectations, clear goals, a timeline, things that you're planning to come back to, right? It's a mini improvement plan for that individual. Then you go over to the other team and you do the same thing to the other team. And so now we are no longer looking at this together. We are looking at this separately. And the win for everyone is this team taking accountability, growing, this team taking accountability, growing, and that in turn equaling conflict resolution. Let's say that goes well. Awesome success. Woohoo! We finally did it. It took us 3 steps. It took us 3 weeks, whatever, but the work was worth it and we did it. So then we move to step number 4. Step number 4 is celebrate or separate. Celebrate or separate. So when you're in the intervene individually phase and you're the coach, you're fighting for your people, right? Like, we're New England Patriots fans. Sorry if that offends you. We have been in many of game situations where we are down in the third quarter, especially in our Tom Brady era. And my husband had a tendency to just be like, oh, we're not going to win. This is terrible, and I, being a natural optimist, would always be like, we could do this. Of course we can do this. We're going to pull through. We always do, right? That little patriot arrogance that we had the privilege of having at the time. So, I was fighting. I was saying it doesn't matter that we're down in the third quarter. Like, we can win. And so if you complete step number 3, intervening individually with this mentality of we can win. Like, I believe in this team. I believe in this team. Like, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to believe that you can do this. And I'm going to give my all to see that you win. Then step number 4 of celebration is so sweet. It's so sweet, right? Because you come so far. And in the process, you've trained people how to do this well. You're training leaders. You're training your replacements, right? Like, this is good leadership. What's also good leadership is when it doesn't work, quickly realizing that the best next step after we have made our vision, our mission, our expectations so clear, we have done this process, we are protecting our culture, we have fought for our people. When you can say the best thing for everyone here is separation, is saying, don't think it's going to work for you or both of you to remain here. It's clear that after all that work, it's just not a right fit. Oh, that's so hard. It's so hard. And no one wants to do it, but there are no other options. And when you have done this process and you know in your heart, you have given it your all and you fought for your people, then you can have peace to know there is only one other option. And you do it quickly. You do it respectfully. You do it with dignity. You honor the person. You thank them for their contribution. You cheer them on as they go out into the marketplace available to work somewhere else. You provide a reference for them as to their good skills to the best of your ability and your comfort in doing that. And you wish them well. It can be done amicably, but there is really no other option if you've exhausted the 3 steps leading up to this point. And as a leader, you're going to be tempted to just feel like you failed. And I want to encourage you that if the next step is separation, that is success. It is not failure. You have succeeded in achieving your primary role in your organization, which is being a culture keeper, protecting your culture at all costs. You know how toxic it is and how awful it feels when an employee acts terribly and they stay, right? It does terrible things for the culture of your organization. Your primary role as a leader is to keep the culture, is to maintain its health to the best of your ability. So by saying goodbye amicably to the people who are not a fit, that is success. You're doing the right thing. You're doing it. Okay, so let's review 4 steps. Encourage direct communication. Step 2, add a third party. Step 3, intervene individually. And step 4, celebrate or separate. This is some of the hardest work of leadership, and no one likes it, but you can get better at it. And cultivating a culture where people run towards conflict resolution rather than running away from it is what you're doing, right? Even just by doing this process once, you're modeling it for those people and for others what it looks like to run towards conflict resolution instead of running away from it. And like I said, it's hard, so I encourage you, get support. Like when you're dealing with this with people, it is hard. And most commonly, leaders aren't trained to do this. No one gives you a guidebook, except for me here, take it, it's free, on how to do this, right? So get support. Go to your leadership coach. Go to your friend, right? Go to other leaders in other organizations that you network with. Find a cohort of leaders, a support system that can help you in this, because it is really hard and it is draining, but it is rewarding. There is reward there. Okay, friends, you're doing a great job. Don't forget to grab that guide from me, grab it in the show notes, or go to heycarolist.com/conflict. If you're watching this on a podcast platform, please, I would love it if you would leave a rating and a review for me. That just helps me know that you're listening, that you're enjoying it. I would love to hear that from you. If you are watching this on YouTube, I would love for you to drop a comment for me, letting me know which of these 4 steps really stuck out to you, or maybe any great takeaways, things you've never thought of before. I would just love to hear from you. But friends, thank you so much for being here, and I am cheering you on. I cannot wait to have more discussions with you in the future here on the Culture Keepers podcast. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.